Denver Broncos and their fans, 1968 was going to be the year to hoop it up. The offensive drought that Denver had suffered through the last few seasons would be quenched by veteran quarterback Steve Tenzi, throwing touchdown passes to veteran receiver Al Denson. And with the exciting Floyd Little outflanking the enemy, this would be their year. But injuries to all three, including Steve Tenzi's twice broken collarbone, prevented a true offensive blossoming until mid-season. This forced general manager and head coach Lou Saban into several offensive adjustments to get points on the scoreboard. This put an additional burden on his defense, which through good times and bad was never accused of being dull. Many teams found they had a tiger by the tail in the Denver defense, as the Broncos had the fourth leading defense in the league against the run. And the defensive line often got together to play a little game within a game. It's called Get the Quarterback. The defensive line, anchored by tackle Dave Costa, number 63, dumped enemy quarterbacks 33 times, or roughly twice as often as in the previous year. As the season progressed, it became obvious that at least one of its members would achieve all-league, if not all-pro status. Number 87 is defensive end Rich Jackson.
Well, my style of play is more or less the style of my arm, and it's more or less an aggressive style. And I just like to hit people, and I like to go hard, and I try to keep myself in superb condition in that it would allow me to go hard on every play.
Of all of Rich's statistics, probably the most impressive is the fact that he defensed 15 passes out of the air. This left some quarterbacks frustrated. Others simply stared in amazement. Whatever the circumstances, Rich Jackson has all the credentials of a true all-pro and the drive to use them to the utmost. And so it was in the early season that the burden for Broncos' success fell to the defense, and the defenders responded with every resource at their command. Against the Chiefs in Kansas City, the Broncos fashioned their own version of the Berlin Wall. They held the Chiefs to only one touchdown through 3 quarters. But that kind of pressure cannot be maintained with few or no points on the scoreboard. The offense was unable to mount sustained scoring drives, and the Broncos suffered early losses through a late-game inability to maintain the defensive momentum. At Denver Mile High Stadium the following week, it was the Boston Patriots' turn to face the onslaught of Denver's defense. The Broncos again knocked their opponent from one end of the field to the other, but still lost. When 2 other quarterbacks were unable to replace the injured Steve Tenzi, Marlon Briscoe, number 15, was introduced into the quarterback slot. Marlon played well in his first exposure. scored the final touchdown himself, but late game errors allowed a 20-17 Patriot victory. In a rematch with the Cincinnati Bengals, Denver hoped to bounce back. Steve Tenzie came off the bench in the second half to rally the offensive forces. Although substantial gains had been racked up, there were only 3 Denver points on the scoreboard late in the fourth quarter. With less than 5 minutes remaining, Denver recovered a fumble and Tenzie went to work. Using the clock and his receivers well, Tenzie marched the Broncos downfield and culminated the drive with a pass to Mike Hafner. The 10-7 victory was significant because the Broncos would lose only once in the following 4 games. This is quarterback Marlon Briscoe, and he would have his finest all-around day against the visiting Miami Dolphins. Subbed superbly for Steve Tenzie and rallied the Broncos from a third quarter 14-point deficit. Marlon displayed the ability to roll out and scramble. He brought additional excitement to the Bronco attack. With time running out and a tie imminent, Marlon drove the Broncos steadily downfield. With less than 2 minutes left, he stunned everyone with a daring quarterback sneak from 10 yards out and won the game. Next, the Broncos traveled to Boston for a rematch with the Patriots, who desperately needed a victory to remain in the race for the Eastern Division crown. It was the 8th week of the season, and the Broncos had more than revenge in mind. For this would mark the first time all season that Al Denson, Floyd Little, and Steve Tenzie would appear together in a game. The Broncos needed more than just a win. With their 3 offensive stars back in the lineup, the Broncos had to give credence to the notion that they would be a more explosive football team. Of course, the Broncos made the trip by United Airlines, the airline the pros fly. 8 out of 10 AFL teams fly the friendly skies of United. Not all Boston fans arrived at Fenway Park as pretty or as chic as this one, but after the game, they all left pretty much in the same state of shock as this one. A healthy Steve Tenzie passed from behind blocking that could have conquered the world as he carefully and effectively connected with his receivers. Preoccupied with the elusive Denson, the Boston secondary found that Denver had several others who catch the ball well. The Denver offense was unstoppable as touchdowns came from near and far. Tenzie completed 11 of 17 attempts for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. The members of the defensive front 4 played their usual havoc as Rich Jackson, Rex Mirich, Dave Costa, Pete Duranko, and Paul Smith all turned in stellar performances. Middle linebacker John Huard, number 57, personally took care of Boston fullback Jim Nance and others at every opportunity. It was with great pride that the defense could look back upon its handiwork. But for halfback Floyd Little, there was no time for looking back.
Boston was a good day for me. I think our offense was put together in such a way that we couldn't do anything wrong.
Floyd Little could certainly do no wrong as he broke the Denver one-game rushing record. More importantly, here was the Floyd Little all knew he could be, the driving, relentless game breaker. Sheer excitement. After this game, Floyd was a much more consistent performer. As is his manner, he gave most of the credit to his guards, who he said gave him the confidence to run. Floyd was utilized to a much greater extent as a receiver this year. This pass and run exemplify Floyd Little at his best. It is a tribute to Floyd that even though he missed several games through injury, he still finished second in the league in kickoff returns and fourth in punt returns. The true test of any game breaker, however, is the ability to perform consistently, no matter what the circumstances. Against Buffalo, Denver had a comfortable lead late in the game when a series of bizarre events occurred. Buffalo blocked a punt and scored a touchdown to narrow the lead to 2 points. Regaining possession, all Denver had to do was run out the clock, but Floyd lost his balance and fumbled. George Sames picked up the ball in mid-stride. He was caught from behind seconds later by Floyd Little. A field goal suddenly put Buffalo ahead with seconds to play. After the ensuing kickoff, Floyd begged quarterback Marlon Briscoe to throw the ball as far as he could. "I'll be there," said Little. The reception set up Bobby Howfield's winning field goal. Yet for the Broncos to become real contenders, they must compete on a par with and win against the big three in their division: Kansas City, Oakland, and San Diego. It was on a crisp, clear Colorado Sunday that over 40,000 fans came to expanded Denver Mile High Stadium to see the Broncos take on the San Diego Chargers. Early, the Chargers did most of the taking. Before the game was 25 minutes old, Lance Allworth, number 19, had already scored 3 touchdowns. The Chargers had a seemingly insurmountable lead when Coach Saban rallied the Broncos to a near Cinderella comeback that taught them a lot about football and even more about themselves.
I think what I'll do is give me a divide left and go 99.
You can drag and go 15. I think would be better.
Well, they might drop off on that. I'm going to force them to come up on tight, see? Otherwise they can go out into a zone, which they'll do here, see? So go with a 99. Divide left, go 99. Watch your tight end.
that guy. Quick look. You read that strong safety. If he takes off, then you go to the tight end. He'll be wide open.
I'll be going in because the float's going that way, see? And then I got to pick my, we're either in or out, but it's either play me out, so I'm hooking in.
Pass is complete to Tom Beer.
Give me a 98 to a halfback screen. Yeah.
He comes up on the tape. What I do, I go inside and then break for the corner on the street or anything. Okay, now I can get him on.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, because the second little fake is not going to do anything for you. Hard!
Put him on the left side. Put him on the left side.
Yeah, work on him.
58.
Okay, we can work on him.
First thing you work on is 58.
We'll get a score. Take it easy. We'll be all right. Okay, let's go.
I think that whenever we go in the 50s, we're going to try to...
Let's go, Marlon.
San Diego is holding on this play.
Next time the screen is open too, so we're prepared for that. Okay, next time.
Pass is complete from Briscoe to Crabtree for the touchdown.
This was as close as the Broncos would come. As they were closing in for the kill, they again fell victim to the frustrations that plagued them throughout the season. The things that happen for which there might be an explanation. Unsure footing, a momentary mental lapse, a split second, all of which go in favor of the other team. The things that one has no way of explaining or even accepting. They're known as the breaks, and Denver enjoyed precious few of them in 1968. The premier case in point came the following week in Oakland. Utilizing all they had learned from the previous week's experience, the Broncos seemingly did almost everything right. They came from behind to take a 20-10 lead, only to see it disappear. Even so, the Broncos very nearly upset one of the strongest teams in professional football. Midway through the fourth quarter, the Broncos trailed 30-27 when Raider quarterback Darryl LaMonica threw a pass that was more than a little symbolic of the 1968 season for Denver. It was a matter of inches. For any professional football team, a season has to be more than so many games won or lost, so many passes thrown or received. During the course of any season, a team will provide a definitive statement about itself. The moment, if you will, that expresses the team, its purpose, its goals, its personality. Fortunately, Denver's for 1968 will not be found in the shrouded gloom of the Oakland Coliseum. Unfortunately, it will not be found in the confines of Denver Mile High Stadium. But the moment does exist. It was 60 minutes long, and it occurred in Shea Stadium, October 13th, against the world champion New York Jets. The youthful, oft-maligned Denver secondary picked off 5 Joe Namath passes to make it a 2-game total of 9 interceptions against Namath. Both games won by Denver in Shea Stadium. The interceptions were only half the story. Trailing 7-0 in the opening minutes, quarterback Steve Tenzie stood in the teeth of the Jets' defense and calmly picked out his receivers when they got open. The 74-yard drive was Denver's most impressive of the season. With a minimum of trickery and a maximum of execution, they extracted a well-earned touchdown from a grudging Jet defense. Denver scored again in the second quarter and led at halftime by 14-10. Then came Steve Tenzie's moment. On the first play from scrimmage of the second half, Steve checked off at the line of scrimmage, called an audible signal to change the play, and threw the clinching touchdown pass to Eric Crabtree. Eric outdistanced the by now not-so-jolly Green Giants. Another view shows the time Tenzie was given by his line to allow Crabtree time to outmaneuver Randy Beverly, Johnny Sample, and 2 other Jet defenders. Simply, it was Denver's play of the year. The Broncos won this game because they deserved to win it. Late in the game, the Jets threatened to tie the score as Namath threw caution to the wind and desperately tried to cross the Bronco goal line. They almost did it. A phrase that hung over the Broncos like an albatross for much of the 1968 season would finally be worn by somebody else, and rightly so. They almost did it. Steve Tenzie cradled the victory, and the Broncos had expressed themselves. Brash, unpredictable, but competitive. They left 62,000 New Yorkers and returned to Denver to find perhaps not so many, but certainly more exuberant Denverites waiting for them at the airport. Denver fans should not have to wait much longer. Their faith in Lou Saban and owner Jerry Phipps will be repaid in 1969 and the years ahead. The time to join the Bronco faithful is right now. You'll want to follow the Broncos in 1969. For ticket information, write the Denver Bronco Ticket Office, West 19th Avenue and Elliott Street, Denver 80204, or call 433-7466. For the Denver Broncos, victory is no longer the impossible dream.
The season's highlights of the Denver Broncos are brought to you by United, the airline the pros fly. Fly the friendly skies of United.